Hello class, it's been a pleasure learning with you guys about the American Revolution. Today I'm going to focus my project and my information on Georgia in the Revolutionary War. So Georgia in the Revolutionary War, just to kind of give an introduction here, the research will examine the following aspects of Georgia in the Revolutionary War. One, impact of the fall of Savannah, the implications of it. Loyalist influence in Georgia, and the importance of the backcountry skirmishes and some stories behind that, some of my favorite. Context. The majority of Georgia consisted of Tories who, are loyal to the crown. Georgia was very reluctant to join the Patriot cause. In this context, we're going to examine the contribution Georgia had during the war. This image shows a snake separated into sections. This is illustrating the need for unity. I got this from the teachinghistory.org, and it talked about Benjamin Franklin and his edition in the 1750s when they illustrated this. As you can see here, Georgia is not mentioned or drawn or any part of the snake. New England, which was a collection of some of the colonies, but Delaware and Georgia not on there. And, that's kind of a reflection of Georgia's role early on, leading up to the Revolutionary War. Didn't have much to offer. They're a very young colony, the youngest colony. Not much as far as defense, economic-wise. So going into the war, Georgia didn't have much to offer. Which brings us to Georgia's role leading up to the war. Starting with the proclamation of 1763, ending with the Revolutionary War, Georgia had some protest involving the Stamp Act, and the Tea Act and other acts that they were really against. Georgia being one of the youngest colonies was very dependent on Britain for defense, especially against the Native Americans. Royal Governor James Wright was popular with the colonists and instrumental in showing in slowing down their reactions. So you did have some isolated incidents. However, those loyal to the Patriot cause, such as Noble W. Jones and Peter Tondee, began to gather strength in Georgia, which kind of brings us to the Georgia Sons of Liberty. This was the Sons of Liberty group. It was a section in Georgia. They're also called Liberty Brawlers. And they met in taverns, which was the popular meeting place of the day. And one of the taverns was Savannah's Tondee's Tavern. Now, some of the acts that the Sons of Liberty did in Georgia was they stole about 600 pounds of gunpowder from the Royal Gunpowder Storage House to get ready for the Revolutionary War. And they protested the Stamp Act heavily. Now, most of Georgia's incidents would be isolated scenarios. But of course, as time went on, the revolutionary spirit that consumed, the colonies, it would pretty much come into Georgia, and people would start to question their support for the British Crown. Continental Congress, the first Continental Congress, Georgia did not send any delegates. This is kind of a reflection of their, lack of support for the cause. Now, coming around the Second Continental Congress, Lebanon Hall, Button Gwinnett, and George Walton would be sent to represent Georgia for the Second Continental Congress. Constitution of 1777, many patriots supported this constitution because it reorganized the government and limited the governor to a single term. This is limiting power in the government, especially in the executive branch, which obviously with the monarch being the executive branch in the British Parliament, they wanted to limit that as much as possible. So they obviously supported that. And this map illustrates the newly formed counties in Georgia. As you can see, Cherokee and Creek lands overshadowing all the newly formed counties. Parishes at the time, but then transferred into counties. This is kind of showing you the need for protection. They needed protection from Cherokee lands and Creek lands, and so it's a very small portion of what modern Georgia looks like today. Now, again, why were they loyal? Jim Pycok describes three different types of loyalists: slave, Indian, and white colonists. Now, through this book, I was able to examine certain factors that he mentioned in his book. Some of these factors start with protection, like I mentioned before. They needed protection, so they're going to stay loyal. Second one would be economic future. A lot of these loyalists, again, Georgia being the youngest colony, haven't really seen a lot of economic advantages. They kind of went away from the trustee colony and modeled South Carolina, the slave plantation style. So they're starting to gain a lot of economic value, and they are enjoying it, enjoying the fruits of their labor. And the British are paying them, are trading with them, and so they need that economic future. And then again, number three, this goes with their future is their uncertainty of this new government that the Patriots are expressing. They want to stay loyal because they're very uncertain of their future. So I know we look at loyalists today as, cowards or traitors, but really they're looking out for their livelihood and trying to see it from a different perspective. Of their economic future could be at stake. They could lose everything. And so this is something to consider. And the Three Peoples, One King book, I really enjoyed just kind of going through it and looking at some of the factors that went into why were they loyal. So, Georgia in the war, Colonel Lachlan McIntosh commanded the Georgia Battalion of the Continental Army. Many Georgia militia figures would lead several unsuccessful invasions of Florida. So after that, they would move to Savannah and start preparing for the defense. Savannah would be the first target for the Southern campaign led by Sir Henry Clinton, and the city would fall in December of 1778. The Georgia Patriot government would then have to retreat and regroup elsewhere, while the Loyalist group were rewarded for siding with the British. And as you can see here, Savannah would be a good starting point for the British to move up the Savannah River, take Augusta, then Kettle Creek, which we'll get into Kettle Creek in just a second. But it was a good strategy to cut off the Patriot cause to the south from the northern campaign and the southern campaign. Again, the siege of Savannah, the implications of the surrender of Savannah pushed the Patriots inland. Henry Clinton now awaited orders to move after Charleston was taken. The British would then focus on moving inland and conquering more forts as they moved north. This marked the offensive maneuvers for the British to move north and secure the southern front. It also encouraged many loyalists to give aid to the British military. Again, here's a map kind of showing you the strategic location of Savannah right off the Savannah River. Battle of Kettle Creek is significant because of two reasons. Austin Dabney. He was a mulatto, an ex-slave, and who was a war hero. He just displayed bravery throughout the entire battle. Again, this is a picture I received off New Georgia Encyclopedia. This is a land grant that was awarded to Austin Dabney after the war was over, just because of his bravery, and it just shows you the honor board grant you a certain amount of land. Austin Dabney just showed bravery, and it was interesting too because he's a mulatto. He's a mixture of African descent and European. The second significant thing about the Battle of Kettle Creek, this was a much-needed victory for the Patriot cause, and it also helped secure the back country. It created momentum and a strategic physical position for the Patriots. Now, on the opposite end, the Battle of Briar Creek was a major loss to the Patriots, and it helped British establish a stable royal government in Savannah. So they were able to defend their position at Briar Creek, keep a stable fort there, so then they could establish a stable royal government in Savannah. So you see two battles here, one for the Patriots and one for the British military. The backcountry was a prime target for many British soldiers to raid and pillage farms and local towns. One of my favorite stories, the legend of Nancy Hart. In this story, I'm going to talk about one of her more famous ones. Hart's most famous act involved 5 or 6 British soldiers who killed her last turkey and demanded that she cook it for them. She devised a plan to get the soldiers drunk on her corn liquor and take their guns and hold them captive. She sent her daughter to get some water to use a hidden shell to alert neighbors of the British presence. Now, while the soldiers ate and drank, Hart began sneaking their guns out through a hole in the wall. Caught holding the third gun, she drew it and threatened to shoot. When a soldier rushed at her, she killed him and wounded another. The rest surrendered. Now, when her husband returned, Hart was holding the British soldiers at gunpoint. They, along with neighbors, hung the soldiers from a nearby tree. Now, here's the cool part. In 1912, 6 bodies were found buried near the Hart home, believed to have been those of British soldiers, giving credence to the Hart legend. I love that story because it kind of represents the backcountry of Georgia, the frontier land, the spirit of the Revolution. Just how Georgia, yes, they were full of some loyalists, but there were plenty of patriot heroes like Austin Dabney and Nancy Hart that would go on as legends. And so, in conclusion, when we talk about Georgia, Georgia was a major battleground during the latter part of the war, despite the Loyalist influence the British wanted to capitalize on. The backcountry was significant because it allowed the frontier parts of the Southern theater to remain in much of the Patriots' hands. The Loyalist support slowly diminished as the war went on, and at the conclusion of the war, Georgia was now an independent state deciding its own future. Guys, it's been a pleasure learning with you guys about the American Revolutionary War. I hope you guys enjoyed my presentation. Please give me feedback and comments on things that I can improve on, but it's just been a great experience in this class, and so I thank you guys.